Welcome back, one and all, to the RimWorld Eternal Winter series, where at the moment Rosh is next to his nice, warm steam geyser working his little fingers to the bone on some research. Although unfortunately this calm and peaceful task would not last, as we had a manhunter pack enter the area. Luckily for us, it appeared to only be 2 manhunting raccoons. Nothing too dangerous, of course, but still something to be concerned about. So concerning, in fact, we even armed our slave Zippy, who, along with the help of Rosh, ended up taking down the first raccoon rather quickly. The second chased us around for a good bit of time. We landed a few shots on it here and there. Eventually, we did kill it as well, though, thankfully. Ah, yes, more meat for the pile. Some time later, I realized that our cabin, for the most part, is extremely dark, and we do actually have a mod that adds chandeliers, and we don't have to refuel them, so I thought that this would be perfect for heat as well as light. And not to toot my own horn, but of course I was correct. And now that Rosh could finally see while he was researching, we actually managed to finish research on stone cutting, which I honestly cannot stress enough. These stones are going to be so vital for our building. Basically anything that we end up building, the material is now going to be built from stone or bone, unless wood is required for some reason. A good example of my new pledge to only build out of stone unless wood is required is this new shelf that we built out of limestone to store all of our goodies. Just as well, I decided to begin working on some castle walls. Unlike the shelf, however, these castle walls take a lot of resources per wall, and they take a very long time to construct, so we'll have to check in on this little project a little bit later. Besides, for the time being, we have a gift. Yes, indeed, Grace, that stayed with us for a short period of time, actually sent us a gift via Glitter World Medicine. Now, these were sent using drop pods, but we'll pretend that they were used in some medieval method, because I don't know if it was me or what, but I didn't want that to happen with the drop pods and the modern technology. But I assume it's something that I forgot to tweak or turn off. My bad. Now though, back to our castle walls for just a moment. I didn't only build the castle walls, I also built the castle wall embrasures as well. And if you're not sure what an embrasure is, these are walls with little slits or holes in them that actually allow you to shoot out. As one might imagine, this is very useful, but that hole goes both ways because people can shoot back at us. Sticking to our theme of walls for a moment though, I ended up building something of a small corridor into our freezer room from our kitchen. This is going to allow easy access going in and out to cook meals, and it is double doored. That way we can try and keep as much cold in there as possible and as much heat in the kitchen as possible. All in all though, thanks to the steam geyser and the campfire and all of our cooking we're doing on it, we're keeping the place pretty warm. For a time we were going out and collecting resources such as wood by cutting down trees, and we were sure to also dig up the stumps and use as well. We didn't want to waste any. Not too long after though, we ended up having a wanderer offer to join us basically for free. Her name was Limmy. I can't pronounce her name or read, so I'm going to call her Lim. She was a very kind and sweet pig person who actually was an undergrounder, and her stats weren't all that great except for her animal skill. Her medical skill was okay, as well as her intellectual skill. But regardless, she could take over Rosh's place as our designated researcher. We quickly threw together a little makeshift bedroom for her with a makeshift bed, all made of limestone. And all throughout nights and days, she and Rosh would work hand in hand together. I had her researching different defensive technologies, and eventually we ended up researching cannons. Once we have enough steel to build these, they'll be perfect, but as for now, they're just a blueprint. Rosh, on the other hand, was actually working on his very own project, a project that would benefit him. I actually had him create his own artificial leg. And finally, because Lim had joined us, we had somebody with a decent medical skill, and the surgery went off without any issues, probably thanks to the Glitter World Medicine as well. Things just kind of fell into place there, and now thankfully Rosh has a somewhat fully functional leg. Even though he wasn't as fast as he was if he had a mechanical leg or just his leg in general, he was still fast enough to keep up with Lim as the two of them went out hunting. Speaking of Lim, we ended up trying to beautify her bedroom with some flooring, a plant pot, a jade fence, things of that sort. It is one of these small comforts that they actually have here as they struggle to survive every day. Unfortunately though, while we were doing that, we ended up having a raid from the Purple Mire Pact. It was only 2 raiders that were going to to try and come and lampoon us in the chest with their weapons. As you might have imagined though, we weren't too interested in getting stuck in the chest with a sharp object, so we ended up having them come to the base where the three of us would try and move around and fire at them. Eventually we took down one raider and then the other wasn't too far behind. Now the first raider that we shot down hadn't died, but I did check their skills and they weren't all that great. Plus I wasn't too interested in having yet another mouth to feed. We're already having to do extra hunting because we have limb, so we decided to strip them naked and beat them to death in the snow, as one does. Ah, life sure is good here in these frozen mountains though, and life went on after that raid just as it always did. We cut stone, researched, and cooked meals, and just sat around enjoying each other's company. At one point we had a slaver caravan come here, and like I mentioned, I'm not too interested in having more people that we'll have to take care of and feed, so we ended up just selling them a few of our bits and bobs and got a little bit of silver out of it. At some point, of course, I would like to have more and more people here, but the problem is I'm afraid that when winter actually comes, yes, this is actually just spring, I think, or summer, early summer. When winter actually comes though, things will get a lot colder than they already are, and I worry that the animals that we're hunting for food may become much more scarce and we'll start starving. That's the only problem. I know a lot of you guys have been bringing up some good mods and stuff that I can use for winter crops and things like that, and I really appreciate that, and I just want to say if you guys have ideas like that, I really appreciate them, so continue to leave those. It really helps me out, honestly. For a good bit of time though, we would continue working on our defenses in terms of more castle walls all around each side of our base, and we would also build more inside the cabin, like this beautiful stone fireplace, or hearth, whatever you want to call it. It is technically called a fireplace, but I didn't really mind either way. It is extremely beautiful, I really love it, and also it keeps us warm, which is the more important part. But because we can't actually cook at that fireplace, we ended up having to build a cooking table. It's really not a big deal. The only thing is we had to use more resources, but I think that's fine. Unfortunately though, this peace wouldn't last for too long as we had yet another raid from the Grey River Pack. This time around it is a few elves that are actually coming, and one of them happens to be a lightning mage, but all three are pretty well equipped. Because we hadn't completely finished our defenses, they weren't exactly great during this battle. Unfortunately, we attempted to shoot out of our embrasures, but it didn't really help because we had a massive hole right next to them where the enemies could walk in, and of course they started to do that. Then unfortunately, we were the ones having to take cover behind the mountains, and they were using our embrasures against us. Like I mentioned earlier, it is a two-way street, a double-bladed sword. And this firing match between us went on for quite a while, so long in fact that I got tired of it and had Lim as well as Zipper go and rush them with their melee weapons, and this ended up working in the end, thankfully. But if you're like me, you're probably wondering where that third elf went. Well, it turns out he wanted to have a battle with the insectoids instead, and he ended up getting his ass kicked. As one does, of course. Now, I'm not going to complain about him going up there and fighting the bugs, because if he would have fought us, there's a good possibility that more people would have been injured severely. Sometime after, though, I ended up deciding that we should extract the skulls of these filthy damn elves and put them on some bone spikes, and that's exactly what we did. Hopefully this will ward off any of their cohorts from deciding to do the same. Back at the cabin, we were building onto our storage room to add more shelves and whatnot, but also because we need some more space for all this heat to go. With the cottage fireplace and the geyser, things were getting a little bit too hot. But at some point I realized that if I destroy these massive ancient wooden war machine things, that we would actually get quite a bit of raw lumber from them. And with this raw lumber, of course, we could use it to fuel our fires, but we could also use this to build some wooden drying racks. You see, up until this point, we had just been selling all of the hides that we've been getting from animal corpses because, well, I don't have any way to dry them, right? So now with these drying racks, we'll actually be able to make our own leather. It is technically rawhide, but it is a type of leather. So this very small corner of our storage room is now going to be used for leather production. Now, we don't actually get quite a bit of leather each time we do it. I think it's about 7 or 8 pieces of leather, but it's better than nothing. It was around this time, though, that I realized I hadn't been focusing enough on hunting and gathering food, and our food storage was looking a little bit low. We only had some pemmican, a few meals, and some fat. Luckily for us though, in the southeast section of the map, there was a small herd of northern boar, and I decided that we would hunt the entire herd. And of course, that's what we decided to do, but there were many factors at play. The snow on the ground made it quite slow for them to walk through, with Rosh's artificial leg that made it even slower, and we got a decent bit of meat from them, but not as much as I would like. I thought maybe we should try some bigger game. So the three of them had hatched a plan. They were going to work together as a team to take down a Mega Wolverine, which is this massive, very powerful creature like a Mega Sloth. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure that the Mega Wolverine isn't quite as strong as the Mega Sloth, but regardless, one slash or two slashes from it is going to kill somebody. Thankfully though, nobody ended up getting hit by it, and we ended up taking it down fairly easily. Although it did take a lot more effort than hunting the northern boar, we ended up getting a lot more meat from it, so it was worth it. Unfortunately though, Zippy was going to rebel against us now, and that was a bit of a problem. I suppose that's what happens when you arm your slave. She went around to different rooms trying to destroy things. We sent Lim in after her, and after a while, Rosh actually went in as well, and they eventually together took her down. And thankfully, although she was beaten up pretty badly, she did not die, which was something I was really worried about with the weapons we were using against her. It was around this time that I realized I was a complete fool for not creating anything to try and suppress her passively, so I ended up creating a slave collar for her out of a tailoring bench that we built. The slave collars and body straps are of course extremely useful. Her suppression fall per day was 20, and then after the collar it was 5. Before we end the episode though, I wanted to show you guys that I actually ended up building a butcher's block out of bones. Now the reason that I'd done this is our good friend Logan0503 reminded me that the butcher's butcher's station actually only yields 70% of what we could get if we're using a butcher table or a butcher block. So thank you Logan for that. And of course guys, remember, like I mentioned, if you have any suggestions, any mods, any just ideas or any feedback or anything, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. Of course, that does help the video within the algorithm and stuff like that, but I do genuinely want to see what you guys have to say and see how you're feeling about the series and any mods that you recommend. I know some people have been recommending a winter crops mod, like I mentioned earlier. I'm going to look into that. I think that would be very useful. A lot of people are mentioning different mods, and I try to look through all the comments, you know, to just read what you guys are saying, but also to see your suggestions. So if you have anything like that, be sure to let me know, and I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching, though. I love you ever so much, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.